A good friend of mine from years ago was fired this last week, Jim Spiegel. Jim Spiegel, pictured here, heck of a shortstop, brilliant philosopher and gentle man, and also a fine musician who also agrees that the greatest rock and roll song ever made was REO Speedwagon, Roll with the Changes. That's right, always, forever, all time. And Jim is a songwriter and singer as well. And he had posted a video on his YouTube page called Little Hitler. And this song is a lighthearted satire of kind of humanism gone overboard, where we talk about some songs or some points of view or worldviews say that just people are basically good and we can all trust each other and let's just all get along. And Little Hitler was Jim's response to that, a lighthearted satire saying in a cheerful voice that there's a little Hitler inside of you and inside of me, and that all of us are in desperate need of God's grace fully because none of us are good enough. All of us have rebellion and brokenness and sinfulness in our hearts. Because of a complaint filed about that video, at some point in time, Jim was dismissed from his position at Taylor University. I don't want to get into the specifics or picking sides. I know Jim, and so I love and enjoy and trust Jim. But I was especially struck by his response. See, Jim teaches philosophy and ethics, and here in his response, published in this article from the Taylor Echo, Jim showed me his heart, and it was humble. As he speaks to the staff and campus community as a whole, Jim, on behalf of his family, says, "We would like to take this opportunity to thank them for the support they've given us in this situation and over the course of my entire career at Taylor. While we are sad to leave, we hold no ill will toward anyone and wish only the best for the Taylor community." So Jim won't be teaching ethics anymore at Taylor, but here he is teaching me, because our paths mirror Christ's paths, and Christ's path took the path of humility. Our triumph, our deliverance, our hope runs through this channel of humility, even in the face of great trial. So Isaiah is showing us how God pours out his grace upon sinners, and he's talked about these people wandering in darkness who have wandered away from the Lord their God and abandoned his ways. They've had a light break in on them. Through all of their oppression, they're making an alliance with Assyria. Assyria is going to oppress and occupy them. He says, "For the yoke of his burden," God's people's burden, "and the staff for his shoulder, the rod of his oppressor, you, O God, you have broken as on the day of Midian," as in the day of Gideon. This triumph out of nowhere, out of a small act with a small group of men. The triumph on the day of Midian. "For every boot of the tramping warrior in battle tumult and every garment rolled in blood will be burned as fuel for the fire." This is the hope of God's people. This is the deliverance they're longing for, this conquest. How will God come and conquer for us? As I put the question there in the middle of the text. The very next verse is, "For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be on his shoulder." This triumph is going to come through humility. It's going to come through vulnerability. It's going to fight in a way that doesn't look like fighting to us. It doesn't look like the way that you ought to break the rod of the oppressor with a little baby. That's how God is bringing his triumph about, through the humility of Jesus the Christ, who will live, suffer, and die, and be resurrected in reliance upon God. So you and I are called to follow. This is our King. This is King Jesus. He says, "Take up your cross and follow me." That involves humility, right? It often feels like death. It's putting to death my desire to be shown to be right, my desire to feel safe, my desire to protect myself. We resist that, don't we? We resist the path of humility. But the path of humility is where God pours his grace over us. We are to seek and to trust in his triumph, not our own defense, not our own battle plans, and to believe and rest in the fact that complete vindication, complete deliverance for Christ's and God's people is coming. Christ will deliver his people, but it begins in humility. It begins in an unexpected way. But that is where his grace pours out upon you and me today. pray that grace would enable you to walk in his ways. It would sweeten your day today, and that it would bring us into humility as we seek to obey him and represent him well in his humility and his holiness. Bless you today.